Alright, here we are. We're going live. Saturday night with Frankly Fabulous. Live from New York City. Live from Manhattan. 21st Street. Famous. We got a lot we want to talk about. I want to talk about sitcoms. I've been watching tons of sitcoms, so there's a number of those I want to dissect. I want to talk about Ben Lerner. I want to talk about Lernergate. Read this because I got a copy of New York Review of Books, which I don't typically. My mom actually, I don't know if she has a subscription. I think maybe she got it from the library, but she would read New York Review of Books. But I don't read it. I don't really read the New Yorker I look at the New York Times on my phone, but I'm behind the paywall. I'm behind the paywall of everything, and the impression I always had of the New York Review of Books was that it was like some kind of super fancy, like ultra highbrow, like literary institution. And I want to go into Ben Lerner's hit job on Lang Po. It's just a rag. It's fake prestige. They're not really on the cutting edge, or they're not doing the highest work, really. The poetry is terrible, to be honest, the poetry in there. But I want to talk about the Ben Lerner hit job. He reviewed Erica Hunt's long overdue new and selected Jump the Clock. And it kind of read like a grad essay. It kind of read like a undergrad term paper. Like you could tell he devoted certain portions of his space to certain things. And he didn't devote that much, but there was a substantial, I'd say 20% of his review was basically him publicly disavowing any, support he may have for language poetry. At least the male. He kind of had complimentary things to say. I think about Ray Armantrout, and I think maybe Lynn Haginian, or was it Lisa Jarn? I can't remember who the other. It was like a female language poet, but he kind of shit on Ron Silliman in particular. But also, I think kind of Bob Perlman a little bit, and a little bit. Who's the other guy? Kind of not that he kind of took a shot at Charles Bernstein a little. But I don't know. It was kind of a reductive, and I get why he was doing it because. Well, I'll go into it. It's a whole Lernergate. Should I just talk about it? What was the other thing I want to talk? I want to talk about New York Poetry Festivals next weekend. Make sure you reserve your ferry tickets today. We got the battle of the mega powers. Not the battle. The mega powers uniting. It's going to be awesome. It's really going to be a great reading. Greg Masters and Don Yorty, New York City legends. Masters of the art form. Great, great poets. Really, two of the greatest poets in New York City. Absolutely. They've honored us by agreeing to do it. They're going to do like 10 minutes each. And it's going to be great. And then I'm going to do a live talk piece as well. Or I don't know. I'll probably read from my book, the talk piece from my book. But I'll probably do a little bit of talk piecing. And I'll probably record it and put it online as well. But that's no reason why you shouldn't come out. Take the ferry. It's just a beautiful time. I don't know. We got fucked on the table. I talked about that on the... I'm really disappointed that we can't get on a table. It's just like, what? We'll give you the money. We know you're going to have tables. I don't know. We missed the deadline. It's like we're poets, goddammit. Well, what the fuck? Let me talk about Ben Lerner. Since I'm already talking about it. Okay. Anyway, I got this copy of New York Review of Books. My friend Greg Masters, I met up with him the other day. We had a great... conversation, and it was great hanging out and seeing him. And he had some New Yorkers and things he was going to give away. I didn't have that much space, but I did take this because I looked at this real fast. I was like looking at it. Is there anything? And then I just lasered in on Ben Lerner review of Erica Hunt New and Selected, because I don't know, it's weird. I think, and this is going to be maybe controversial, but for some weird reason, I think for straight white boy poets, well, maybe not straight, but for white boy poets in the kind of Harold Bloom, Ashbery canon mode, Erica Hunt has become kind of an interesting kind of like crucible and like crossroads of styles, I think. Like in this review, Ben Lerner wants to talk about the political ramifications and the supposed political ideology behind why language poetry is the way it is. And he basically reduces it to, he's not really incorrect. He reduces it to, in the new sentence, Ron Silliman's manifesto of Langpo, it was originally a talk. His point is like by rupturing grammar and syntax and whatnot, by having a new sentence, you're undermining the systems of capitalism. You're undermining traditional systems of meaning, and you're corrupt. And so it's political to write this way. Whereas Ben Lerner's point in kind of hindsight is, well, that's the ultimate position of privilege. You're so privileged that you can literally write writing that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't serve a social purpose. It's almost like affectation, or it's sort of affluence to say I'm going to write this sort of, at least that's, I think there's truth to that, definitely. I mean, I'm not going to say the only people that, because part of what he's missing he's reducing it to that political dimension in specifically. And I think that, like, to be fair, a lot of those language poets guys have revealed themselves to be totally creeps. And it's super, it's not all men. Like, there's a lot of strong, and hey, to be honest, like, I'm not, like, language poetry isn't my favorite fucking thing in the world. I think it's okay. I think it's it's one way. I do like Ron Silliman's books. I will say that. I've gotten a lot of his books this year, and I enjoy them. Honestly, I think they are good. Are they the result of, like, privilege? Yeah, probably, I guess. I mean, Ron Silliman was a fucking labor organizer and shit. He was definitely a socialist, if not more. I mean, the poetry theories in this are what? They're rooted in some kind of French. The poetics are rooted in some kind of French. I don't know if that's Roland Barthes or what the fuck that is, but it's deconstruction or whatever. And so that's he devotes a portion of his review to sort of distancing himself basically from that, which is odd, because you could definitely read Ben Lerner's poetry in a sort of language poet mode. I mean, he's a little bit more like, if you want to trace language poetry back, I would trace the lineages, at least in a certain way, through Clark Coolidge, right? Certain New York school stuff, maybe Joseph Trovolo, John Godfrey has certain things in common with language poetry. I would say that New York school is a little more rooted in kind of like a daily reality or something. Like language poetry can be, it's purely material. The language kind of takes off, and I'd say that has probably more in common with like a Clark Coolidge who was getting that from Ashbery, right, in Tennis Court Oath, his second book, and so who knows where he got it from. He got it from surrealist, Dadaist, collage, cut up, automatic writing, Gertrude Stein, right? Sound has a lot to do with it. Ben Lerner didn't really mention that. Like, the reason why the language poet, maybe I'm misreading it. Like, I did just pick up the new sentence, and the part I flipped to was literally basically Ron Silliman saying what Ben Lerner had claimed. But, and I don't really like there is something about language poetry. It's a little bit too like pre-movement academic eyes. It's those guys are all really severe kind of academics. They all have PhDs or I mean, I will say that I think the East Coast language, I mean, Bruce Andrews is somebody that I really think is not discussed hardly ever in a kind of surprising way. I think they were taking a Rimbaud kind of, systematic derangement out of the senses to its logical conclusion. They were taking postmodernism maybe to its logical conclusion as far as it being something that, like, it is rooted in systems of meaning, and like to me, it creates more possibility. The fact that you can combine words, not necessarily looking first and foremost to some kind of coherent narrative, logical sense. It's experimenting with language and using language as material, and you can marry that with wanting to say something and wanting to have a narrative or paint a picture or have it be aleatory. There's more things going on than purely this political dimension. I mean, now, of course, everybody needs to reduce everything to their political dimension, and I think Ben Lerner was a little bit like everything. He's a little bit ahead of the curve. He just seems to me like somebody has always been really good in school, and I find that really uninteresting. Like, he's probably always gotten great grades. I mean, he didn't go to Harvard. He went to Brown, right? That's a good school. But it's like he's won all the awards. He won them, like, at the earliest. He's just an overachiever. I just don't find that very interesting. Like, I do like his poetry. And his books are okay. The fact that he won, like, a MacArthur Genius Grant, to me, he's just kind of like a pop writer in a certain way. Like his books, particularly 10:04 when it came out, it was sort of a part of the New York, just like Sally Rooney or Many Love Affairs of Nathaniel P. like novel. It was like one of the novels of that year that was kind of about our lives, like. Maybe it wasn't a huge seller, but it was like, that was FSG probably, like, it's very easy to read. It's very readable. He talks about contemporary issues in a very up-to-the-minute way. Like, in that, he's talking about Occupy Wall Street and Hurricane Sandy and fucking Park Slope Food Co-op and shit. It's just so obviously his life. It's autofiction, right? But it's not, to me, it's a little less interesting. Like, if you look at new narrative writers or the autofiction writers of the previous generation, their material was way more risky. The content is all about really subversive queer lifestyle or... I mean, Dennis Cooper stuff, right, is like very, or Dodie Bellman, it's married to something that's also like very fantastic and very kind of like Dracula or pop culture. Like, it just, Ben Lerner's stuff it's just kind of obvious, I think. Like, he just writes exactly, and he's always got like smart things to say, but I don't know. He's a little bit too good at forming these kind of rhetorical... He feels like a lawyer. Or his parents are psychiatrists or something. In his last book, he like branched out and like wrote characters. And it's like, wow. He's writing in a voice other than his own. I mean, I didn't read it, but... Leaving the Atocha Station... I heard, like John Ashbery was talking about, it was so good. It was such a great book. Or like I saw Annie Baker, the playwright. She mentioned how much she liked it. It's like, to me, it was just kind of a funny, it was like a sitcom, to be honest. His character was like a Seth Rogen character. It was like he kind of smokes pot and he kind of like is a dweeby fuck up and is a little bit self-conscious. but like he's also like a super achiever, and he's like he's kind of getting away with all this shit. He's in Spain on this like fellowship, and like it was so clearly his life, and it was basically just like a comedy. Like it wasn't it sort of talked about contemporary things. Like his poetry did too. He wrote poems about 9/11. Like he's always been political. And even this guy on Twitter did bring up a good point, like in his book Hatred of Poetry, which I gotta say, this book has become like a foundational text in a way that I really don't think is good. Like it's not a good argument, I don't think. Like the hatred of poetry, like I too dislike it. Like this is the thing it's just not, he's like a Paris Review kind of guy. He's not avant-garde, I wouldn't really say. He, like I said, he doesn't really take risks with his writing, or his character's so bland that it's not like some subversive, like super risky, like Kathy Acker book or something. Like, and to be honest, autofiction is nothing new. It's what Kerouac did. It's what James Joyce did. It's what Proust did. It's been going on for a long time. And I think they probably did more interesting things with it. You know, Kerouac, once again, is kind of a sound writer. His approach, this was another thing on Twitter. Sandra Simons had this question, Dr. Simons had this question about adults who have reread On the Road as adults. What did they think about it? And I didn't chime in, but I kind of wanted to. I haven't read On the Road, I don't think, in a long time. But I do read Jack Kerouac a lot, and I really think people approach Jack Kerouac the wrong way. They are, and in fact, what he does is kind of more alive and more contemporary because people still don't get it. It's not meant to be read as this fully cooked, really went over with a fine-tooth comb. And it was written fast. It's experimental literature. Every one of his books kind of has a different technique, and they are different, and that's part of the integrity of them. Dr. Sachs is like a radio play, like it's kind of like, but it's his childhood thing. It's like The Shadow, and it's kind of this, whereas Dharma Bums, everybody likes Dharma Bums. I was thinking about this. You could teach a whole class in Kerouac, and I think it'd be good. People read Kerouac the wrong way. The books are individual experiments, and they're individual kind of like, and he did really get his project done. I mean, maybe he didn't write his entire life, but he did write a lot of it, and he got a lot of books published considering he died when he was 47. I mean, part of it was he wrote fast. He was imitating improvisational barroom conversation, like somebody telling you a story over a beer. That was his intention. His intention was not to write like, I don't know, Henry James or something that's incredibly worked over. It's an improvisation. It's like listening to a live recording. It's a live session basically, and he gets a lot of different. So Dharma Bums, on the other hand, it's more understandable. Short sentences, declarative. The story is very clear. It's kind of this glamorous kind of. It's a kind of a pioneering nature kind of text, Zen, all of it, right? It's like a Sierra Club. It's like a hiking book, and it's San Francisco and kind of that whole. So that's that book. Then what? The Subterraneans. He wrote it in 3 days or something. Like. Whereas his later works, Satori in Paris, or what's the Vanity of Douloise, or what's the are much. He kind of slowed down a little bit. He kind of wrote more simple sentences. But you have to read it on those terms. That's not even talking about the poetry. To me, Jack Kerouac is a better poet. But you should read his books like they're poems, because that's what they are. They're poets' prose. They're not novels like Jonathan Franzen writes or fucking Dave Eggers or whatever. Like, or even Cormac McCarthy. I would say, and I did want to talk about the book of the day. The book of the day, Eileen Miles For Now. I would say Eileen Miles is a writer in Kerouac, and very much in Kerouac mode, where it's like speech. It's speech, and it's colloquial, and it's a live recording, and it's auto-fiction, and it's kind of romantic and trying to be, and it's fast and personal. Ben Lerner is writing like finished prose. I mean, one of the things that and to be fair, like, my work has been kind of in parallel with his in a lot of ways. I mean, he got everywhere way faster than I did, of course. Like, Ben Lerner, he talks about he first read In the American Tree, the Ron Silliman anthology, when he was in college in the late 90s. You know, I was at fucking middle school at that point. I didn't even get this book until this year. Ben Lerner's first book was, I think, National Book Award nominee in like 2003 or something. Like, he's just always been way, way ahead. And just like I said, a really good student. Like, he's good at getting fellowships, grants, getting good mentors. He was mentored by Keith and Rosemary Waldrop. But I look at my video show, right? He's in the Brooklyn Library episode, or the Brooklyn Book Festival episode. It's one of the first episodes. It's from September 2014, and he's talking about 1004 or whatever. That book was coming out around that time. I, of course, read Leaving the Atocha Station. Ashbery was still alive. I think they did a reading. I think fucking Ashbery's last reading, right? It was at Brooklyn, or what the fuck is that place in Red Hook? Oh, God. Not Brooklyn Steel. I can't believe I can't. But it's Ashbery, I think John Yao, Ben Lerner, I can't remember who else. But everybody went. I didn't. I went to the open mic in at Freddy's with Olivia, which was better, I think. But it was like Ashbery's last public, and it was with fucking Ben Lerner, right? Like, Ben Lerner is more political, I'd say. He kind of understands the Ashbery kind of aleatory, but he was more current. He'd write about Super Mario Clouds and shit. He's always been very smart and ahead of it, but he's also straight, white, bland as fuck. And he was kind of like maybe the last guy to get in there like that. I mean, people have kind of an unreserved admiration for him or something. Like, he's a distinguished professor, right? I would see him in Brooklyn. I saw him in Prospect Park, or I saw him on Fifth Avenue in Park Slope once, and I saw him at Unnameable once with his baby. He did the fucking Eileen Miles interview in the Paris Review. Goddamn Ben Lerner did it, for Christ's sake. Like, I don't think that that's wrong necessarily, because I do think that his work probably takes after their work in a lot of ways, as far as like more probably the fictional side of things, like Chelsea Girls and Eileen Miles' fictional project is auto-fiction, in a, if you want to call it that. To me, it's just literary writing about, like, I don't think because you live through it that makes it less, like, it's still not even an imitation of life. It's just it's a moment of life that is described so we can relate to it or learn from it, or I mean, I don't know, human beings are perversely voyeuristic. We like watching scenes. That's part of living in New York, just watching fucking people hail cabs or people walk by on the street, what they say, overheard snatches of dialogue, seeing people cry on the street, seeing people argue. Scenes, I don't know. And so, I mean, fiction, this is something people are talking about with the cat people, right? And this is sort of related. Maybe we should get into this. Cat people, I guess, I didn't read it, but I think the guy who it's based on wrote a fucking, like, salon essay or something about how it wasn't cool, or I don't know. But he was saying that he thought Cat Person was the New Yorker story that was sort of basically about your typical Tinder experience where the woman is severely underwhelmed. It's like a hookup in the guy, and I think it was just so accurate that it kind of crashed the internet. It was like the New Yorker's like most popular emailed shit, like by far. It went viral, this Cat Person, because it was just it was every woman's experience, I think, where the guy just hooked up and then just treated her like shit, basically, and was distant. They didn't know why. And it's based on a real guy, and I think maybe he's even a lit guy in it. He might be a professor or something. I think that's part of it, maybe. That's sort of what that fucking Nathaniel P. book was about. The love affairs, like the dude some hot literary so he can get women or whatever. So anyway, a lot of the people were arguing that fiction is just memories and things that you know that are sort of re-scrambled, reimagined, reconstituted, and put out as a new thing. It's all based in life. I was surprised. I think they were saying, I mean, I think if it was a man using a bunch of details from a woman's life and, you know, not apologize or being unsympathetic or just like, that might be a different, I don't think they would have defended it the same way. That might be a libel case or something like that, whatever that is. But because it was a woman writing about a man, that's what I noticed, is a lot of people online were quick to defend it, which I don't disagree. In fact, I agree completely. I think all these rules about copyright, intellectual property, and ideas are just absurd. And so when I started doing scenes from a life, people thought I was like crazy because I was like filming stuff regularly. They're like, people acted like I was egotistical. Now everybody films every fucking thing for TikTok, right? Let me zoom in a little bit. I gotta get some more water too. It's like the stuff of our lives is going to be... Ooh, that's not a good shot. Hold on. I don't know. In a certain way, it's less interesting. When all of these things were breaking, like 10:04... or leaving the Atocha station, or it was sort of before cell phones and Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat, where now it's so normal to see everyday reality as content. So autofiction feels more just, I think, natural. It's like, it's always felt like a natural impulse to me ever since I heard what Kerouac's Doulois legend was, and Proust, his novels. I knew that was the most interesting idea to me. Douanel is the same thing. Antoine Douanel, Francois Truffaut. The fact that it's all of these, it's episodic. It's no different than long form narrative television. It's just, in a certain way, it is a more satisfying way of storytelling, I feel. A fictional universe I mean, I think what I do is more current than what Ben Lerner does because I use my actual life. I do it on video. I am right. This is sound writing. This is basically, like I was saying, telling somebody the story in a bar or whatever is basically the mode of composition here. So anyway, to get back to this review, there's more to the language thing than that. He kind of reduces it to that one thing. You could talk about sound, and he's doing it to make a distinction between Erica Hunt and sort of make her blame. She's not a part of this affected, privileged white guy language thing, which is just them being indulgent. And Ben Lerner is some kind of like master orator, like he was some kind of debate champion or something, right? That doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not really impressed by his logic or his reasonings. But he did have a sharp jab about Donald. Well, Donald Trump is the most disjunctive grammatically you could be, and he didn't do anything to undermine capitalism. In fact, quite the opposite, right? We all know that. And, there's definitely some truth to that. A lot of the performance art or language poetry or kind of like theater of the absurd or whatever, Artaud type, Rimbaud, spoiled brat, blah, 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 nonsense, scatological, defacing of meaning is just bratty, privileged behavior to some degree. To me, I think, not that I think there's an expressivity, there's you can imitate life in a better way. I think it's a more sophisticated way of entertaining life. Part of Ben Lerner's point in the review is that language poetry grammatically resists kind of folding into a meaning, and that's kind of what gives it. And but also that's what makes it undermine capitalism and shit, because it's not just. And to be honest, I don't really think that that's wrong. That's partially what I'm thinking about with like this sitcom thing, right? Because the sitcom form, if you think about it, it's such like an accepted. I mean, I grew up watching sitcoms, half an hour, and they're formulaic as hell, and they're reinforcing a status quo. Absolutely, I think our writing is no different. I think our literature is no different. Most of what's out there is a similar kind of propaganda, and part of that is the way that it's written. I think that it's less elitist. It's just like noise music, right? It's less elitist than it appears. It appears to be more elitist than popular music or poetry magazine poetry, right? Like, it appears like it's, nobody understands what the fuck this is. Like, I don't get this. Abstract expressionism, I don't get this. This is like, what is this? My kid could do this. Noise music, what's so great about this? But that is, it's not that it's that a kid could do it, but it's allowing interpretation for the receiver. It's a cathartic, expressive form for the creator, and it's live, and it's something that is not as condescending to the audience, because it's open-ended, it's like these sitcoms are so fucking, they're all about family, and it's all about patriarchy, and it's all about, I mean, Home Improvement is really bad. Home Improvement is so male dominant. I mean, there's 2 women on the show. There's Jill, his wife, who's a psychologist, and there's really, the character is not really, she's great, but like, I'm sure it'd be more complicated. And then there's Heidi, the fucking like babe on Tool Time. Like, those are the 2 women characters in the entire fucking show. So it's like, you're getting this thing that, I mean, that was one of the top shows on TV, definitely, when it was on. Because it's just so instant gratification, and so what they want you to perceive as what your life's supposed to be. There's supposed to be a husband, a wife, 3 boys, and you own a house, and you got hot rods or whatever. I mean, it's all about cars in Detroit, and we'll talk more about it. I mean, Ben Lerner's book is essentially the same thing. Fucking Tool Time, Home Improvement, the credit at the end of the show from the stand-up comedy, based on the stand-up comedy of Tim Allen. All of these sitcoms are auto-fiction, in that there was a comedian who had a routine that was about, oh yeah, my wife, oh yeah, my tools, we gotta, and of course, it became a thing, and so they hire staff, writers, whatever, and they flesh it out, and then we get to see that character, his wife, his family, come to life. We get to go, and that's what fucking Seinfeld is. That's what Mad About You is. That's what all of those shows were. They'd have for the most part, they had a comedian, and it was they'd build a world around their stand-up comedy routines. Cosby Show, right? Jesus Christ. We won't even get into that motherfucker. I mean, I think Ben Lerner definitely is trying to be on the right side of history, but I also think he's very aware he has to do that for his job. And he's been a part of academia for at least, a decade or something? Like, that's just a part of the climate of those jobs. I don't necessarily give him any credit because part of his fucking Hatred of Poetry book, he took time to talk about, like, Amiri Baraka. That's cool. In 2016 is when this book came out. So right before Trump. Like, good for him for doing that. But like I said, Erica Hunt's work has become kind of an interesting intersection because it has language poetry, and it has those kind of like avant-garde, right, postmodern technique things, but it's also coming from a traditionally marginalized identity. So you can associate yourself with it, and it's going to seem like you're a good guy or you're doing the right thing. Or, I mean, that's one of the only avenues you have, honestly. The white people have to sort of get behind some kind of multicultural agenda to stay involved. They can't really promote themselves because that's not what the herd is doing right now. And part of what I wanted to talk about was right after 9/11, right? 9/11, nobody said anything really about, well, maybe it was an inside job, or even like Bill Maher, right? Not that he's cool or anything. Nobody likes Bill Maher, but like he lost his fucking TV show because he said something that was sort of mildly pro hijacker. And so you couldn't say, the idea was too soon. You can't make jokes about it. It's too soon. You can't make jokes about it. We'll put a boot in your ass. We're going to war. We'll go to a fucking war in Iraq. We'll go to war wherever. You fucking did 9/11. We're kicking ass. It was so, everybody was shell-shocked. Everybody was terrified. We all wanted revenge. Everybody wanted, well, maybe not all of us, but point being, there needs to be people who are, this is not new, this kind of like self-censorship. In fact, I think we've gotten very good at self-control as far as like our personalities. Maybe not habits or food, or I think that's why so much emotional eating, because we are so controlled and composed. I don't know. I definitely feel a lack of connection, right? So that's probably part of the reason why I feel this way. It should be easier to connect with people. And it's because they control themselves too much. And so that's part of that is speech. And what you can talk about, what you can't talk about, what you're supposed to say. Everybody's in line, especially now, about like exactly what you're supposed to say. And I do think that is important for artists, especially, to stand in opposition to whatever the fucking prevailing. That's how it's always been. I mean, right now, I think there's definitely the perception that if you are an artist, there's a certain politics that you absolutely must have. And I don't not have those politics. I don't disagree. But I think that there's clearly like things that are part of it that nobody wants to like go anywhere near talking about because it's like dangerous. I mean, there's a lot of sense of danger and risk. You make a wrong move, you say the wrong thing, you're canceled forever. You're done. Canceled being, it's like that's what happens to TV shows. This is how we see everything because we grew up watching sitcoms. You're fucking canceled. Meaning you'll never get a job again. You'll never work. You'll never get to be an artist. No one will ever book you to read. No one will have your paintings. No one will have you on their comedy show. Nobody will have your band because your politics. Well, I think it is important right now that there is a hard line drawn, right? Because it's an insane moment in human history, and like it's not okay to be irresponsible politically in this country right now. Like if you think that you're right wing, you need to think about what that actually means and what that party has actually done and who they are, and not just the theater of it, which is what most of the fucking like anti-vaccine, anti-mask. Think about what that party actually does. Starting wars. I mean, to be honest, those people, a lot of them, and I get it now more than ever, all they fucking care about is the market. It's all they fucking care about. So the right wing is their party. In a certain sense. Those people are definitely involved in the art world. There's definitely money, dirty money, right? But not as I think it gets into these binaries as well. And that's part of what's gotten us into this trouble is like you're either a democratic, socialist, Marxist, defund the police, abolish, leftist, Antifa, or Black Lives Matter, or it does all get lumped into one, or you're a Trumper, black pickup truck, F-350, murdered out, anti-vaxxer, racist. I mean, it's true, right? That's where we're you're either one or the other. There's no fucking middle ground here. But these two factions are like tearing. They're like a zygote that's tearing apart. I don't really know that there is anything that can stop that. I mean, there has been kind of a resurgence of the last guy recently, and it's not good. I see his name coming up more in the media and papers and shit. He was just at UFC or whatever. Mel Gibson saluted him. It's like, this is not good. They shouldn't report it. It shouldn't be out in the mainstream media. I'm gonna get water real fast. I'll be right back. Enjoy the ambiance. Part of the point that I want to make about like language poetry or noise music or these kind of abstract elitist forms is that they're actually populist. That anybody can do it, or part of it is it tells you to embrace your natural inclination. I mean, our grammar systems are something that are taught to us, like right and left, and red means stop and green means go, and all of it. Like, we're formatted, we're programmed. This is not a bad thing, but part of poetry's job is to question that, explore other things, provide a place for other existences, other meanings, other typical tendencies. I do kind of want to sit down. Let's try that. Let's see how this feels. How long am I going on? Like 47. I mean, I feel bad because he did provide a close reading of one of her pieces. But it, like I said, it read like it wasn't one of his best, and it was just kind of like it read like somebody's college undergrad paper or something. It wasn't like super insightful. I just get really annoyed at New York Review of Books. They always have Ben Lerner and they have Michael Robbins. They always platform Michael Robbins like he's some super interesting deep thinker. It's like, god damn, like these are very mainstream. They're not. They're academics. They're not that interesting. I don't know. They're not experimentalists. They're not avant-garde. I mean, Michael Robbins writes doggerel. It's style. He's a stylistic vampire. He's very middle America. He's not breaking new ground or anything. He's like Billy Collins, essentially. And just because he's got a PhD or whatever, they book him like he's... I mean, he's got his niche. He writes about music, right? So people... A few poets do that. They write about pop music or whatever. They write for different, so they have a little bit of a readership outside of just their poetry books. But he mentions that Erica Hunt went to San Francisco State and studied, I think, under Michael Palmer and Kathleen Frazier. She had mentioned something at the Poetry Project about how she spent time with Lorenzo Thomas. I'd be curious to know more about her involvement with the language poets out there when she came back. And also her relationship with Charles Bernstein, because they seem pretty close. He was at her book launch. And also, once again, the music thing. Her husband is Marty Ehrlich, who is a saxophone player. I don't know that much about the music scene, if he's like really respected or what, but that was not really referred to in any specific way. To me, those kind of things probably are a little more relevant. And his whole thing was kind of based on like this kind of absurd reading of the title, Jump the Clock, and to sort of like use that as a key to the poetry. And he missed one of the most obvious meanings of it. I mean, he was reading Jump the Clock as in jump the gun. So to jump the clock is to like get ahead of it or something, beat it, but sort of like in a cheating way or something. Whereas jump the clock, to me, like when somebody gets jumped, they get robbed, but there's kind of like I don't know, there's a charge to it that's like, so to jump the clock, if you're jumping it, it's almost like that's sort of an anti-capitalist gesture, maybe. You're stealing back, you're taking it by surprise. In a certain way, robbery is the voice of the people, the poorest, most destitute. Not that has anything to do with the title of the book, but point being, there were just meanings that he didn't really refer to in that, and it was just kind of an absurd, just not a very interesting. You could tell there was like an orderliness to the review. It was almost, like I said, there was like percentages. This much of it was devoted to this, and he was just very clear about the political distinctions he was making, and they seemed to be drawn pretty much down gender, lines. Why all of a sudden the new interest? I mean, Erica Hunt has been around, once again, since the late 70s. Her books are not really even in print, other than this fucking, the New and Selected that just came out. I mean, it's absurd. That's why I wanted to read it, because it's like, oh, finally, they're giving, like, a very notable platform, New York Review of Books. Like I said, my mom reads it. And part of this is I have a personal connection, right? I'm the other straight white guy. I mean, Erica Hunt has been more or less the closest thing to I've had to like a real professional teacher, I'd say. She was very, very, very extremely generous and kind to me. As far as inviting me to things, and just with everything. Like, she's been more kind to me. I mean, she's just been extremely kind. And I admire her so much as a fucking artist and poet and human being. And I mean, it is a huge regret. It's I think about it a lot, how the thing at fucking Long Island University fell apart. And it was a real honor to film her book launch, to be honest. I really wanted to do a great job because she helped me out a lot. And yet, she attended the book launch with Adam Fitzgerald, who's sort of another Bloom canon Ashbery. I mean, literally, Adam Fitzgerald was Ashbery's protege and sort of the successor, handpicked. He is attending Erica Hunt's book launch with Erica Hunt. He's sitting right next to her the whole time. How did he get into this picture? I mean, for me, it was sort of accidental. I did not know that she taught at Long Island University when I got the letter from them. I had just recently sort of discovered Lewis Warsh. And so getting accepted to that program, and then Erica Hunt being the head of it, she invited me to a translation conference and to a workshop with Ann Waldman for free. And she was just she treated me with respect. She treated me like I was a real thing, which nobody else has done, to be honest. To be honest, I felt a lot of imposter syndrome. That's what was so horrible about it, is I just felt like, why are they being so nice to me? I just thought there's got to be money involved in this somehow. Like they feel like they can get money out of me or something. There's no reason why this program is being so nice to me. Like, it was just stupid. It was really stupid, because I don't believe in myself, really. I don't know. Until recently. I'm starting to... I think I wrote maybe my finest piece ever the other day. I think it's really good. I might send it to the New Yorker. It's so good. It's an excellent piece. It's political. It's real. It's original. It's affecting. It's writing in a style that nobody else really is doing that much. So I'm going to send it to the New Yorker. I sent it to No Deer. Hopefully they'll take it. But if not, I'm going to send it to the New Yorker, because it's actually a good piece. So I do feel like it's appropriate, because, I mean, Erica Hunt edited the anthology of radical women of color with Dawn Lundy Martin. I think that is like a seminal, foundational, like must-have text that just came out, a few years ago. Like, Erica Hunt is finally getting the respect that she deserves. She should have a major professorship. It was just weird, because the review kind of like talked about language poetry, and it talked about Erica Hunt, but it didn't really go into detail about the specifics of maybe where her style comes from. I mean, it is language poetry, but is that all it is? Or I think there's more personal narrative in it. Like, it's not a bourgeois experiment. But I think that these tendencies, language poetry, they have roots, like I said, in sound and word as substance, how it looks on the page. That's something everybody, and this is kind of, I don't know, my ultimate point is, like, I think everybody can write that way. Maybe it's traditional, or it is like an avant-garde thing, and maybe a bourgeois thing, because it is kind of an esoteric. I mean, I know for me, right, like, I had to be in New York for a few years before that stuff really clicked with me. And so people who are in more provincial, or I don't know, more common kind of industrialized programmed routines, something like that might make no fucking sense, or might be sort of like dangerous, I think. It's sort of a conservative point of view. I mean, Ben Lerner's point was the poets need to be more responsible politically, and writing disjunctive nonsense is not it's an abdication of your responsibility. You need to do better. You need to figure out a different way to help and be a part of the effort. And I think there's truth to that. Like, I don't think it's the answer, clearly. In fact, I made a joke about it on my Twitter last year about, fucking up syntax is like, it is kind of a cliche, right? That like, oh yeah, we're fucking up syntax because it's like political and shit. Well, to me, it's just there's more possibility and there's more like illumination or enlightenment in it's not nonsense. It's just original pathways through meaning and using the language in original. I think that is poetry's job. To me, I find that stuff more interesting. Maybe that's because I'm a privileged, overeducated white guy. But to me, it's not really any different than free jazz or, right? A lot of it, I would say, is rooted in that. Kerouac, very influenced, obviously, by jazz music in particular. Charlie Parker, Lee Konitz, Lester Young, Slim Galliard, you name it. So that music, that wasn't mentioned at all. Not necessarily that that's integral. I don't know. But you certainly, I don't think, can reduce language poetry to just this one fucking thing. That's my point, I guess. That's what felt like a hit job about it. I didn't really disagree with that much that he said, but I also don't think it's that simple. And, like, I do think that right now there's, like, a moment where people are, like, heavily disavowing language because it was maybe a more popular thing in academics in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. And some of those people, like Barrett Watton, I guess, is a big sexual harasser. And so that might go hand in hand with some of the technique. And maybe it is a little bit... But I don't think you can entirely dispose of it. I think that's a mistake. Like, to me, I think it's a more unlimited possibility because you're not trapped in responsibility to Well, this would be a good point to... Let me stand up again, maybe. This would be a good point to start talking about sitcoms because sitcoms are a good example of... and I do want to read, too. Let me get my fucking notebook and shit. Sitcoms are a good example of, like, very much propaganda. As far as... It's just their propaganda for certain lifestyles because that's what they can sell products to. Like, I mean, I'm watching this fucking basic TV. I get all these real basic channels. Country music TV from the 80s, Crook and Chase. Been watching a lot of that. White trash TV. Hillbilly TV shit. And they have one that's all sitcoms all day. It's called Laugh TV. And I watch it all the time. And it's not good sitcoms. It's not like Frasier and shit. There's no NBC, I don't think, anything. Stuff that I never would have watched. Stuff that I absolutely just like abhor spiritually and politically and everything. Including, but not limited to, How I Met Your Mother. That's like the best one they show, honestly. Because at least it's about young. And then there's Home Improvement and According to Jim. According to Jim is the other one with Jim Belushi that I've been watching. Those are the ones I've been kind of watching the most. They also showed That 70s Show. I'm not really into That 70s Show that much. It's a little too, I don't know. I'm not sure who that show's for. I think it's for like hot people. That's why I don't like it. It's a little too like, it's just too much like high school. I don't want to think about high school at all. But according to Jim and Tool Time, Home Improvement, we always called it Tool Time. And it was one of the, like The Simpsons was Bart. We always called Home Improvement Tool Time because it's a better name, honestly. To be honest, it's really not a good show. It's not. There's not a lot of depth to it. There's a lot of like thinness to the characterization, and I don't know why they don't answer those questions, because it's not the thing that makes Tool Time appealing. I'd say, I mean, just the branding, right? Tim Allen and his that whole thing was like a cultural phenomenon, but like his character, he's a total narcissist because the show there's not a whole lot of depth. Like I said, most of it is about him, and then his kids are sort of like echoes of him, and he's the kind of pattern. Like Jonathan Taylor Thomas even kind of looks exactly like him, and then poor Jill, like she's a psychologist, or like she's studying to be a psychologist or something, and yet she lives in this house with all these males, and then there's Al, and then there's Wilson. It's like it's all guys on this show, and it's just totally male dominated. But it's like one of these men are from Mars, women are from Venus type things, like my wife, like me, I'm into carburetors and shit, and all this, my hot 45, whatever. Dualies, exhaust, or whatever. And then she's just like, there's not, I mean, unlike TV shows now where like we're trained to expect all this continuity and all this like kind of seeing different aspects of the characters, and like these shows are more kind of like, I mean, of course, it's all like one-upsmanship, like smart, alecky cracks on each other. That's like all it is. Like, oh, Tim's an idiot, and and that's like most of the show. And then a huge part of Tool Time in particular is like sermonizing. It's almost like the Red Green Show. To me, it seems like kind of it's like a similar. It's like Michigan, it's Tools, it's Detroit Lions, it's Cars. It's Garage, it's Heidi, the fucking calendar babe, and like the tool belt. But part of what really makes Home Improvement work, I think, is the production value. The set pieces on Tool Time where like, he builds some super turboed out bathroom and it like explodes or whatever. They always like did a really amazing job. And I do think Tim Allen probably is like super into that shit. I do think he probably is some kind of like, he's probably a lot like the character on the show, right? Like, he's probably clumsy and kind of a clown. He acknowledges that. He kind of acknowledges he's like a little bit of a doofus, or not a doofus, but like he's almost like a shaman character where like he's got a magic, even though he's just like fucking things up and setting shit on fire. His own oratory, like he's always repeating things that Wilson said, but he's fucking them up, and he's saying them in kind of a dumb way. But like the whole show is just these conversations about, oh, here's the lesson that we learned, right? This is the sitcom. And so that's the other thing as I was thinking about. Well, it's 30 minutes, and it's 22-minute, episode, 8 minutes commercials. The shows that get promoted are the ones that the sponsors want to fucking pay for, not necessarily what the viewers want. Like something like Tool Time, or According to Jim, where it's a nuclear family, it's a patriarchy, the guy is the job, the mom is the mom. And I mean, at least Jim has female kids. Like Tim is all men, the whole fucking show. And like the thing about one of the things about Tool Time is the kids do have personalities a little bit. Like the oldest is kind of a jock. Jonathan Taylor Thomas is like the smart one, and then the youngest is like kind of the wimpy gay one or whatever. I don't know. JK. He's like the mama's boy. And so the older two like play jokes on him. Like that's one part of the show that's very like filled out. The kids actually have like kind of like a little bit, and the actors are all fun with each other, and like, but the plots and shit are just, they're not. I mean, I guess they had to do 22 of them of a year, but the idea with Home Improvement, right? The thesis of the show, Home Improvement. Every episode, they're not only is he working on with tools, but they're working to make their family better, to fix the problem, to change out the roof, maybe to put in some new we're teaching our kids lessons, morals. We're improving our family, and I think it's just too pedantic with that. One of the things about According to Jim, which is a similar show in that it's a paterfamilias dad, kind of dumbass male, Midwest. That's a Chicago show. But it's also like old paradigm. It's like it's a nuclear family, husband, wife, I think 3 kids. He has 2 daughters, and his son is the youngest. But it's also about, right, his friend, the fat dude. Sorry, I don't mean to be the one guy, the blonde guy. And then her sister, who's like Brad Paisley's wife, I guess, in IRL. I've really prepared this because I've been thinking about these sitcoms a lot and what they mean, because they are very much in our living room, and they're very much a part of like the military-industrial complex. They are like completely psychological programming for how we're supposed to live our lives and what we're supposed to think is normal. According to Jim, I think feels like a sitcom that really shouldn't have worked, because Jim Belushi is not a stand-up comedian, and he's kind of a weird show business. Like he finds relevance in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect, because I mean, right, like you could write him off as sort of like, well, his brother was more famous, but I think I do like Jim Belushi. Even though he's like the most heinous person on earth, and like his whole Blues Brothers thing, it's just like so horrible. But like he's a weed farmer now. He's on Twitter. Check him out. He's like kind of an enlightened individual. I don't know. And this show is kind of inspired in a way. Like it's almost like Family Guy-ish in that it'll just like do crazy shit. But it's kind of more honest, I think. Like, even though it kind of has the infrastructure of, like, it's teaching a moral about doing the right thing to your kids and shit, he kind of will admit to some degree that, like, his character's not perfect, and, like, that's not always what happens. I think it would be interesting. Part of why I'm interested in these sitcoms is because I do find the form very interesting. Like, just because they're always used to, like, sell you this moral and, like, deliver these jokes, you could do anything with a sitcom. It doesn't even have to be funny. It could be a completely different material and setting and everything and intention. It could be poetry. It doesn't have to be this formulaic status quo like I said, they're trying to sell dishwashing detergent, fucking Downy laundry stuff. What else? I don't know. Food, right? Like fucking cereal. What the hell do they sell on? Just typical nuclear family, like toxic American products that you should absolutely not be using and don't need. That's why these sitcoms were created, because they sell in these easily digestible. I mean, they run this shit all day. Like, you can sit there and watch 4 episodes of Home Improvement like that. And it is kind of like it's binge watching, right? But somehow when you're watching it on TV, it feels so much dirtier. You just feel like such a piece of shit. You're like, oh, God, I've been watching how many of these goddamn episodes? 4? Oh, my God. I don't need to see anything else about, you know, Tim and Al. And Al is super competitive at miniature golf. It's like there's not a lot of they're missing an opportunity, I think, with by not making the characters more specific and interesting. Like, they kind of create given circumstances and just forget about them. And even, to be honest, even the fucking, like, messages are, like, super trite. Like, he always goes next door to talk to Wilson, right? Wilson being this kind of, like, just stupid Midwestern, like, folk wisdom. I don't know. It's where Tim can get deep. Because you can tell, like, Tim Allen probably has that sort of, like, tendency. That's what's so weird about the character. Is, like, he's not actually good at his job, but he's sort of like this preacher, or he's like a pastor in a way. But he always goes, whoever it is, every fucking episode they go out and they talk to Wilson, right? Like, Wilson's behind the fence, you never see his face. It's like a funny, mystical, and he's like super smart, super worldly. He went to Oxford and shit, but he's also like kind of zen, and like he's like some kind of Dalai Lama of like the fishing trip or whatever. And it's very like Michigan. It's almost like those fucking Jeff Daniels, Escanaba in the Moonlight. It's sort of got that kind of feel. Like Wilson kind of has that flannel fishing coat, bucket hat thing. And also just, I don't know, he feels like a syndicated columnist or something. Like, what he says, like, the other day, it was like, something about polar opposites meet in the middle. And it's like, that's just, like, so trite and fucking, but that was the point of the whole fucking show. Was shit like that. You know, that was the stuff that Seinfeld was trying to avoid, right? Seinfeld didn't want morals, didn't want emotions. Even though Seinfeld is kind of an arbiter of minutia, Tim is like always looking for this kind of like, I don't know, tribal, like, what's his movie, his Disney movie, Man of the Tribe or something like that. Like, there's some aspect, like Ted Nugent, right? All these guys from Michigan who are like hunters and super right wing. And Tim Allen, I'd like to see, what is his new show, Last Man Standing or whatever. He's like super dumbass right wing, because I'm sure he grew up that way. He's like Mel Gibson light, I think, in a certain way. They kind of look the same. I mean, Mel Gibson is really a Nazi. Tim Allen, I think, is just kind of like, he's just a typical, like, oh, I'm a conservative. He, like, watching this show feels like probably what my Uncle Mike's house is like. Like, it's just kind of, it's old school. It's like, this guy grew up in the 70s, he's into cars. Women belong on calendars, like air fresheners, turbo engines, football. You know, like, according to Jim, basically the same fucking show. In fact, there's probably a lot of goddamn shows that are like, what? Everybody Loves Raymond. I mean, The Simpsons is even kind of like sloppy dad nuclear family. Like, the dad's a total piece of shit, totally irresponsible, totally just a dumbass, clumsy. But that was the patriarchy, the white male patriarchy in America, you know. So according to Jim, I don't know, it's like, it's a little more inspired. Even though I think all of these shows kind of thrive. They remind me of like high school plays in a way. They kind of thrive on the performers. And I do think it'd be fun as a performer to be on one of these shows. I've heard it's like the best job you can have as an actor. Because it's steady, it's well paid, you know, you're in front of an audience, but it's not that much work. You know, it's what, like 4 days a week or something. I think it'd be fun. This is why I want to do a sitcom. I'm going to write a sitcom. In fact, I don't know. I probably should. But according to Jim, like, he's not a stand-up comedian. But one of the things he mentioned, I don't even remember where I read this, but he said most of the show is like based on things that actually happened to either him or somebody in the writing staff. And it does kind of feel that way. It feels more, whereas like Tool Time, I don't even know where they got the ideas for their story. They're always absurd. They don't really feel real. It's always like Tim and Jill are going to go out to dinner and but the game's on. So, oh man, Tim's like really fucking conflicted because he wants to watch the game, but he has to eat. Oh, fuck. It's like, that's not that interesting. Like, that's just, I don't know. Is this a problem in like most people's lives? Or like, if it was, I don't know. I mean, is that amusing? I don't know. It didn't seem like that great of an idea. Maybe that's the epitome of the white male dilemma. Oh, my wife fucking wants me to do shit, but I want to watch a game. Oh, God, life. Such a torture. You know, according to Jim, was more about, I don't know, this one I watched today. He got some kind of check from a charity. I'm not sure why, but it was for $1,000. And his wife, of course, his wife is like the pure one, the saint. She's good. That's basically how all these shows break down. It's like the guy is like some kind of immoral, cheating, like kind of man. And the wife is like, oh, now guys, you have to do this. You have to do the right thing. Like the mom that holds it all together. And she's fine with it. She's darning the socks and folding the laundry and cooking chicken cacciatore. She's waking up at 3 a.m. to make sure that's fucking, like, setting right and shit. And she never complains. Jill never really... She's such a good sport about everything. I guess she's from... she knew Stephen Tobolowsky, who's kind of a... He's like the poor man's Wallace Shawn. He's in Sneakers and Groundhog Day, among other things. He's famous. But he's like bald and he's got that voice. Ned Ryerson? He's that guy. He is like from Louisville, I guess. Check out his movie, incidentally. Check out Two Idiots from Hollywood. If you ever get your fucking hands on a copy of Two Idiots from Hollywood, it is a fucking trashterpiece. It's really one of the most amazing movies I've ever seen. And I think Stephen Tobolowsky... I don't know if I'm saying that right. I think he wrote it or directed it or something. I mean, it is really an amazing film. It's from the 80s, and it's very rare. But he's like some kind of, I don't know, like you said, he's like the poor man's Wallace Shawn. I think he's been involved with like Humana Theater Festival. And who's that? Who's that? Steel Magnolias, or what's that? Crimes of the Heart? What's that? There's some fucking play that came out that was like real big from Humana in Louisville. He knew a few like people that went on to be famous, and he's famous. But he, I guess, was originally supposed to be on Home Improvement. He was supposed to be Al, which, to be honest, I really don't think would have worked at all. Because part of the joke and part of what makes it work, I mean, I do got to say, I think Al is the Kramer, I think, of Home Improvement. Like, he's kind of, even though he's not that great, he's probably like, I mean, Jill is great too. Point being, she's like, she was some theater actor at Humana Theater Festival. And Stephen Tobolowsky was originally supposed to be the Al character, or the sidekick, right? There was Tim and there was Stephen Tobolowsky, which, to be honest, I really don't think it would have worked. The thing that makes it work is Al looks like Bob Vila with the beard and the flannel and his manners. Just it's everything about it. You see everything about like Michigan outdoors. He's kind of gentle, but he's a manly man. He's kind of awkward. Like he's really a fully fleshed out character, and he contrasts nicely with Tim. Tim's got, the suspenders, the tie. He's more like the foreman or the contractor or whatever. He's slick. He's full of shit. Al is like kind of the down and dirty plaid. He's the lumberjack. He's the real craftsman. He's gonna save your life when Tim like puts a fucking nail gun, through your helmet or whatever. Tim will get your ass killed. In fact, I would not work on a work site with Tim the Toolman Taylor. The man needs to be fucking disbarred or whatever. Take his license away. Whatever the fuck. Stop this monster immediately. Let me zoom in real fast. We got a lot of angles today. How's that? Is that good? Maybe I should put it in front of the, anyway. That's what brands it, right? Is the tool thing and his kind of love affair with tools and the cars, the tools, the tool time, that garage, the color scheme. It has a very specific color scheme. It's like this kind of metallic blue, kind of ship's gray, gunmetal. It's all these kind of cool tones. His kids all have brown hair. They all look like fucking golden retrievers, or they all look like dogs or something. Like fucking like setters or something. I don't know. And JTT was like some super hunk, remember? He was in all the fucking... I think he's an enlightened master, to be honest. He's like really stayed out of the spotlight. I guess there hasn't been a picture taken of JTT in like 8 years. I think that's pretty cool. Good for him. In this age of Instagram, the fact that JTT doesn't have an account with a blue check, like, that's a healthy human being. But of course, I mean, he was like worshipped as a teenager. He was such a huge teen idol. Their haircuts, those boys. So yeah, it was originally supposed to be Stephen Tobolowsky, but I guess he had some other thing he went and did, some movie thing or something. But he recommended Patricia Richardson, I think is her name, for the Jill role. And she's perfect. She really doesn't let on that her life is like as sad as it... I mean, and just like... She just kind of like handles it. It's like there's no problem at all. I don't know. It's kind of a modern housewife role. It's not, like I said, it's not, it's amazing I mean, the show is kind of funny, right? It's kind of wild because of the tool shit. Like, shit gets set on fire, and like, Tim kind of like, he has that kind of inspired lunacy. I think that's part of what brands it. It's not about the character or the Aaron Sorkin, like... According to Jim, I think it doesn't have that... I think Jim is also a contractor. He's like the foreman or whatever. But he's in a blues band. He's got like a garage band. Which I think is really funny. And it's a way for Jim Belushi to get his bullshit music directly into the show, which of course he loves to do. The episode I saw today was like, it had to have been a season finale or something, because it was really a big production. And that's why, I mean, it seems like he really cares. It seems like, I mean, Jim Belushi did go to Second City, right? And to be honest, I think he's a good performer. Like, he was in fucking About Last Night and shit. He's done Mammoth plays and shit. Like... He's a smart guy. He's on fucking Larry Sanders. He was like one of the funniest people on that. I enjoy his cameo on fucking Larry. I love Mr. Destiny. He was good on Saturday Night Live. Jim Belushi was good on Saturday Night Live. Like, he really tries to make that show interesting for what it is. I mean, it's just kind of another one of these, like, dumbass male excusing the patriarch for all their crimes thing, and the wife suffers and the kid suffers. I mean, his show, it's almost like Family Guy or The Simpsons in how big of a piece of shit he is. And that show kind of goes to further, like, there's all these flashbacks, and, like, the episode today, he stole his wife's purse. So he's wearing, like, a mask, and there's kind of set pieces and shit. They kind of take it, it's a Second City thing where they really make something out of the idea. They make it like a game, or they make it something idiosyncratic, rather than Tool Time is just these vague kind of like sermons about, well, doing the right thing or what. I don't even know how to keep your marriage fucking together. And then I definitely should get, because I do want to do a reading. I've been on for an hour and a half. I also want to talk about How I Met Your Mother. Because I've trashed it a lot. And now I've actually seen it. And I still hate it. But you start to see what people's different takes and how they use the sitcom. They use this form. How I Met Your Mother is almost like a writer's personal journey, like the Bob Saget kind of narrative framing. It's like Wonder Years, right? There's like a voiceover from the character who's older about a younger part of their life. The idea is the show takes place, in the future, 22, and then it's flashing back to 2006 or whatever when the show was on, about how he met his wife. And the core of the show is kind of, well, it plays off the different comedic stylings, right? There's Jason, what's his name? Jason Segel or whatever, who honestly I don't like. The character just feels like every fucking person who went to a state school who moved to New York. I gotta say. And like, I just don't. His mode is like these zany, like, I'm gonna sing a song about the slap contest or what. And then he did like the Muppet movie and shit. Like, I don't know. I'm not into his particular brand of comedy. And the character on the show is like from Wisconsin and shit. And like, I don't know. It's just like the character is like a frat bro. Then you have fucking Neil Patrick Harris, who's kind of an interesting character because this character is very old paradigm. He's kind of a womanizer, and the way that they talk about the women that he hooks up with is just like very disrespectful and not realistic. I mean, the idea is like he's just like always getting laid and just like he's some super player, but it's like, who are these women? And like, I'm not sure that the character actually has any game. Like, based on what I've seen, like, I didn't really buy it. It seemed like it was written. I mean, it's Neil Patrick Harris, right? So he was Doogie Howser, which everybody remembers Doogie Howser being like this very serious fucking thing, and he was a kid. He was in his fucking, he's like 10 years old and shit on Doogie Howser, but he's a genius. He's a doctor. He's a kid doctor. Doogie Howser. And so then when he reappeared as an adult, and he's like this flamboyant, like tall, like really elegant, but like ostentatious and like a physical comedian, but he kind of had a brand that was very of that time, like the kind of Metro, those suits and shit. His hair is like, and he just, everything crisp. So it was, you're kind of like, holy shit, Doogie Howser's like, and he's also like, what, on Broadway and singing and dancing and shit. So it's like, holy shit, Doogie Howser's like can fucking sing in his head wig and shit. Like, what? How? This is crazy. We thought when people were child stars, they just like disappear. Like, they become suicidal. You know, they can't deal with life like fucking Leif Garrett or David Cassidy or something. But here's Doogie Howser, and he's like, you know, fucking ripping it up on the sitcom. And the other thing, I mean, he's gay, right? I mean, he's sort of, I mean, it's known. And so the character's like super hetero and super like a womanizer. I mean, it's not really cool at all. It's very like rape culture-y. I mean, not to throw that word around, but like it's sort of encouraging that. And a lot of the show lives in that kind of like post-college bar, like young professional, like Friends, they hang out in a fucking coffee shop. It's like, it's caffeine. It's sort of bohemian, but not really. It's like sort of pre-Starbucks. Just like a hang space. 90s, slacker, whatever. Whereas How I Met Your Mother, it's like they're working class. It's after work. They meet in a fucking bar. People are playing darts. And like, that's everybody who's a finance bro in New York, right? So these characters, they feel like that. They feel like they're young professionals. They live to go out. It takes place in New York. They're riding around in cabs. The one episode I saw took place on New Year's Eve. So, I mean, one thing the show does, it does jump around more in continuity, and like it plays with time and things. I guess the guys who wrote for Letterman. And so the show is kind of based on their time when they wrote for Letterman. They'd go hang out in bars. Chumley's, I guess, was one of them. I forget what the other ones were. One near the Letterman studio somewhere in Midtown. But so, like, the show is kind of based on that life. And I don't know, it feels very college to me. It just feels like people who, I don't know, drink as their prime recreational activity. Like, that show feels kind of like what their lives are like, maybe. I don't know. And then the fucking core of the show is this Josh Radnor guy who's sort of the toxic, sad literary guy. And I don't know if it's based on one of the creators or what, but he's sort of a romantic. I mean, just he's looking for his love, his wife, the woman he's going to marry and shit. So the whole show, he's just like pathetically, every woman, oh my God, is this the woman I'm going to marry? It's just like, this is not a good paradigm to be in either. So you have Neil Patrick. Well, you have three. You have, right, Jason Segel's with Allison Hannigan from Buffy and from American Pie. She's had a very interesting career. The fact that she's able to do all of those different things, I think, is pretty impressive. Like, Buffy is very different than American Pie, which is not really like this show that much. It's a sitcom, it's in a studio, but she's in all that shit, you know? So they're like, I don't know if they're married or they're like fiancéed or whatever. So they like love each other. Great. Then Neil Patrick Harris is just a serial womanizer. Like, that's the joke, is he's just like constantly hooking up. He's like James Bond or whatever. It's just unrealistic. That's not the guy that would be happening with, I don't think. But it's like, I don't know. It's like a fantasy. It's a misconception of that the public may have that they put on TV. And then, okay, so this Josh Radnor guy, he's from Bexley, Ohio. And I'm not sure. I think he's a little older than me. He has an MFA, I think, from NYU. He went to fucking, you know, get some kind of acting. I'm not sure what, if he was in Stella Adler or what. But, you know, that's a similar background to me, being from Bexley, Columbus, Ohio. And he's also a filmmaker. He's made a few kind of like thinly veiled autobiography, or like sort of aspiringly literary. One of them, I think, where they shot at Denison or was about Denison or something. And it's sort of about like a writer dude in New York who's like I don't remember exactly what it was about, but it's sort of like in that fantasy lit guy vein where it's like the character's like a professor and he's wearing tweed jackets with arm patches, but he also lives in New York and He's a writer, and I don't remember. I don't know exactly the story, but he's made a few films of his own in addition to his sitcom work. And that show was one of the top shows on fucking TV. I think they all made a lot of money to be on it. So he kind of had maybe like the version of the career that if I had done my life correctly, maybe that's what I would have done. You know, I not necessarily the grad school part, but in a perfect world, what I could probably get a job on some sitcom, or maybe could have before the white male thing just came crashing down on us. Now that's not going to happen. And then he could make his own films about his, you know, whatever, self-idealization as a writer. Genius. Like we all do. But he had the resources to do it because he was on a TV show and he had money and connections and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like the character is so... You could tell they cast him because he's kind of like a Schwimmer. He's kind of got that hair and that kind of like look. That kind of wounded puppy dog thing, right? Like the eyes and like, you know, just adorable. But the character is just not realistic. Like that's not how love works. That's not how life works. Like... You can't just mopily like going around looking for the mother of your children. Like, Jesus Christ, it's pathetic. This character is pathetic. But he's like a really good looking dude, and like he's like kind of tallish or whatever. Like he's not like a creep, even though those are all creepy behaviors. So he's constantly just a loser with women, right? And then there's like another woman on the show who he's in love with. I'm not really sure how. I guess they're just like one of those like never gonna happen type things. And I haven't watched that much of it, but it's more about sex, right? Because the fucking Neil Patrick Harris character is like, you know, a sleazeball. They had fucking Winnie Cooper actually from Wonder Years. She grew up and became like a super babe. And she's super smart. She's like a mathematician or something. She's written all these books about math. So, of course, she's like super hot. And so they had her on that show. I don't know. So that show, what are they selling? They're selling young, single... They're selling this, right? I mean, here's how to not feel alienated. Here's how to procreate. Here's how men are supposed to think about sex. It's basically like a Budweiser commercial. It has that vibe. Pool table in the background and like, you know, neon bar. Sort of like Always Sunny kind of has a similar thing. But Always Sunny is not a sitcom in a studio and shit. It's they film it on location or whatever. So it's just poison. It's just comedy writers who don't understand how relationships actually work, and they're filling everybody in the entire country with their incorrect mentalities. So the CIA funded all of it, obviously. It's a psyop. All these sitcoms. There's a few other ones on that I haven't really... I kind of have clicked through. Grace Under Fire is on... what else? I don't know. As a kid, I watched sitcoms like it was my life, really. In elementary school, like sitcoms, there was definitely a long period of time where just like watching certain days. I mean, must-see TV with like The Single Guy, Caroline in the City, of course Seinfeld. I remember watching Platypus Man, a Richard Jenny sitcom. Herman's Head, I do remember, from Fox. That was on TGIF, of course. Family Matters, Step by Step, Hanging with Mr. Cooper, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Friends. I wrote a poem. It's one of my best poems about sitcoms. But I also... simultaneously had the idea, like, as a serious artist, sitcoms are like the lowest form. Like, you're a fucking hack if you're writing a sitcom. Like, you're not James Joyce, you're not Proust, you're not Shakespeare, you're just a fucking. Now I'd kill to have a sitcom. And I don't know, I don't think you can hate the form necessarily. It's almost like a 10-minute play. It's 3 scenes or 3 acts, 22 minutes, 3 7-minute acts, like 1 location each scene, right? It's almost like something you could maybe write in one sitting. I'd like to try my hand at it. I'd like to try to do a sitcom. Proctor, the sitcom. Scenes from a Life, of course, is a sitcom, but people don't really. I have to exaggerate it a little bit to make it a little more apparent. So I'll do that. Maybe I'll read some stuff now. There's always more to say. I think it's kind of interesting that sitcom 22 minutes. That's what The Funny Show does, and it's these kind of like moral tonics. They're quick. They're in and out of these situations. I do think they kind of trained us to think things in life are neat or more causal than they actually are. Like sitcoms, everything causes all the other shit to happen. It all has meaning. There's nothing extraneous. Things resolve right quickly. Louie was the kind of sitcom that sort of like cut those strings. I think that could be explored further, really. I mean, Tim and Eric have done some crazy shit with sitcom form, like their Beef House and shit like that. But, I don't know. Alright, maybe I'll sit down while I do my reading here. I've been wanting to read this for a little while. Should I roll another one? I mean, I'm almost out of... Where are we at? 147. Yeah, I'm going to sit down. Oh, Christ. Let me just quickly talk about this book, the book of the day, For Now, by Eileen Miles. This was written as a, Wyndham Campbell Prize, a lecture delivered annually to commemorating the awarding of the Donald Wyndham Sandy Campbell Literature Prize at Yale University. And I think Patti Smith won it one year, and I think Nausgaard won it the next year. And they print these little books of the lecture. So there's one, and they're called Why I Write. That's kind of the prompt. But, I don't know, the reason I wanted to talk about it was because it just ties into my own life, like a lot of Eileen Miles writing in such a crazy way. First of all, because when Eileen Miles did their reading at Poetry Project that I filmed in 2019 in the Sanctuary, one of the pieces they read was a long excerpt from this about their archive and how they were selling their archive to Yale, because a lot of this book is about their archive and kind of their stuff and the physical kind of like embodiment of their writing and their career and the money that you get from it as well, and the value. And it's appropriate because they sold their archive to Yale, I think, around the same time that they also got this prize. And so their talk at the Poetry Project was sort of about that. And it just being a talk, I think, is relevant to what I was speaking about earlier with like the Ben Lerner prose style. And that's not to say that all poets who write prose need to write this way, but I would say this being a talk, but all of Eileen Myles' work, I mean, particularly as their style, I think, has gotten more, like, self-understood and sort of like, official or something, defined, distinct, definitive. It does incorporate speech. I think Eileen Myles always knows exactly what part of the story they're giving you, and that's part of what makes them a genius writer, is that they're also a great storyteller, even though they're writing in this kind of fast, almost not like vague, but they're not spelling it out for you the way a typical literary writer might. It's more like a Kerouac thing where it's sound, it's speech, they're saying it to you. It's a Gertrude Stein kind of thing as well. But this is almost like a novella or something. It kind of moves you. It basically has three big kind of movements, which is like talking about their apartment, which they got offered. That's why it was relevant to me, because it's like their situation with their landlord in their apartment on East 3rd Street. They were offered a lease buyout for like $75,000. And then they were going to move. But then it's also about their these boxes with the original drafts of their poems in it, which got stolen or lost or something. They're not exactly sure, but they're gone. And so that greatly decreased the value of their archive, or at least it decreased the value in some way. And then the last part of the book, I think, is about selling the archive or whatever to Yale. But it's just like, it moves you through those things almost like a novel or like a literary story. And it does it with just like such like real emotion and real truth, and you know, it's got that intensity of real life. There's things that happen in it that are hard and kind of devious and things, the way the landlord character and whatnot, and it's autobiographical, and this happened like in the last few years. It was sort of happening around the time. I mean, this is the lecture they were giving. A lot of the writing is about how they're trying to write the lecture and whatnot. Their house in Marfa, right? That's another big part of it. And so it's interesting because it is this kind of just like, not like throwaway, but it's like really just a talk that they were hired to give. They were getting some money, obviously, because it's some prize, but in exchange for that, they have to give a lecture. And I mean, it's really Eileen Myles is good about not wasting any publishing that I think they're asked to do. There's always an intention, and it's always great writing. It's never just like, oh, okay, this is this like little review I got to do, like that'll just be my fucking, you know, and then this is my novel. It's like, this is really like, this functions like in the duration of it as well. So the fact that Eileen Myles presented it not only at Yale as a lecture, but at the Poetry Project as part of their reading, and in the sanctuary, you know, it's packed. It's a big room. They're trying to, or, you know, that does kind of posit it in almost like a performance or like a stand-up comedy or a talk piece. It has that colloquial speech sort of. I mean, it's a highly like artificed, compositional imitation of somebody telling you. Like, it's a highly refined artistic facsimile of that. Of course, an actual transcription would be much different, but it has hard edges and creases in a way that a lot of other writing doesn't. And it unfolds without a lot of punctuation and weird stopping and starting like a lot of literary prose does. So it's existing in kind of multiple registers in a way. And so it's also partially related to this. Like, if you read this out loud, it'd probably be 2 hours or something. I think it's 84 pages. That's what these are. Eileen Myles gives a lot of talks at different museums and whatnot. And I think as a poet, that's like one of the coolest jobs and opportunities you can be given. I know Ben Lerner does it. Get to go around to different museums like, you know, Miami Art Museum or Atlanta Art Museum or wherever and give a talk. And so this is kind of an example of that. I mean, it's really a beautiful little book, but I like how it works kind of in those medium parameters in a certain way. I haven't read the Nels Gardner or the Patti Smith book. I mean, Eileen Myles is a must-read. It's cool that they're working on this level and that the Academy finally recognizes. But I do think it took decades for them to get there. Eileen Myles talks about they didn't become a professor till they're 50. San Diego bought them a house. And, well, one of the things that was crazy about it is I felt like I could relate directly to so much, but there was one point literally where they were talking about the pins that they use because they like using like a thicker line, and talks about how they like using Pilot G210s. And that's literally, my mom got me these. These I've used for the past few years. My mom got these from her office. They're Pilot G210s, literally. It's my favorite pen too. I mean, it's not and in fact, so that was just weird. You know, reading the book and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, Eileen Myles uses the exact same pen I use. There's a lot of stuff like that when you're reading it. You're like, oh my God, this is exactly how I think, or this is exactly how I am. It talks about how early on one of her boyfriends encouraged her to be a cartoonist. And in fact, at the Poetry Project, Eileen Myles, when they came in the first time I remember, gave me a Sharpie from their apartment. They had these Sharpies, and they were like, does anybody want a Sharpie? And I was like, yeah, I'll take one. So I got this Sharpie from Eileen Myles, and that's one reason why I draw all my posters and shit in Sharpie. I mean, I was doing that before, like in Columbus. That drawing I did of Jack and me is in Sharpie, so it's not necessarily new to me. But the fact that Eileen Myles gave me the Sharpie kind of made me go, okay, I'm supposed to use this. Like, the Sharpie is like my aesthetic. So let me try reading this shit. I don't know. I had the idea I wanted to read all this stuff, but maybe it's too late. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. I wanted to have a record of it, I think, but I got a new episode. I think it's premiering in 20 minutes, so this will be, well, no one's watching, but you'll watch later. So this is, well, watch the New York Walks episode. It's an hour long. It's one of the good episodes. I'm moving in a new form. I think you'll like it. 628, The Wars of Love, part 935. They had to close the Oculus because too many people were committing suicide by jumping off its great heights. 629, Lines written among the veil of cashmere. Pain pills, assembling the now. Sand in the heart, careerist saints. The best people disappear. I'm not toxically masculine, I just appreciate beauty. Air plants, hydroponics, grow lamps. I just like to sit near groups of people at the park and pretend that they're my friends. Smoking weed is sort of like eating a salad, right? Sneaky picture, you seem to enjoy those. Kelly, blue book value of a Choco Taco. Women smell by. I was just about to ask you. My penis is a super fun sight. Brooklyn is your teenage bedroom. Empire Dental, a dentist's office on the 50th floor of the Empire State Building. My 2,500-page novel takes up 8 kilobytes of data. Completely out of underwear, I have taken to sleeping in the nude. 6:30, cunt loonies. It's too late to pick up where we left off. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Applesauce lubricates my week. People know how many stairs it takes to get to their apartments. 7-1, in the mind zone. In the mind zone. Smooth operator. Touch of modern Halo channels. Try free. Blindfolded except for the stars. 7.2 kilowatt hours. I get overzealous about Plaza. Combustible airwaves ate a few tears in the know. 7.3 first things first. Breakup texted my drug dealer. Post nasal drip, get out while you can. Common decency, it feels good to be outside, trying just to breathe. The roaring 20s are on fire. Oops, I did it again. Skipped a grade when I shouldn't have. Magnolia is on fire. Cumin is on fire. India is on fire. Corvette is on fire. This older couple playing peekaboo around a statue with their adorable wiener dog are going to make me cry. You've got what it takes. Beauty, it's what's for dinner. I am still here, El Guapo. Red and orange mantis-like bug on my hand-me-down from Peter Ameripair Normcore dad jeans. Making a quick documentary about the park. Tells the story. Did I already read this? Fuck, I did. I think I did read this. Okay. Tells the story off angle. All delivery drivers know all delivery drivers. A Burger King off Church Avenue. Video is our weapon. Showing others what we see. Ichiban the transitions. It seriously feels like October. The ocean's on fire. A viral image. At least the memes will be dank. Kelly Oxford, pink skies ahead. If he did it right, I wouldn't worry so much. Straight from the heart, sex is like fishing. I barely catch anything. You never know where anything you're looking for is. And when you catch it, who the hell knows why? 3 girls sit down to eat their food. Umbrella flips in the wind at my feet. Nobody claims it. Some guy left it. It's just kind of here. It's getting cold. Think I'll go home. A magazine of the park. Okay, I think this is where I wanted to start. Fuck. 7-4, Listomania. I don't know if we're in heaven, hell, or some strange combination of both. Directions to fireworks up on the roof. Relaxing place. Children of the night singing in a chain. 8th dogleg bleak. What's behind me? The park is empty. Independence Day night. Moon and glittering explosions. Over the village as I come down 9th. Atlantic finale. A city by a body of water. Parish hall I can see from my window. Read myself here from college, this exact block. Advanced nostalgia, which I'm living now. Nostalgia. Feeling nostalgic about how romantic your life is as it's happening. 21 blocks north, 42nd Street. 21 blocks south, Houston. Indicate what you're about to do. Couldn't see but for the filming. Lime green emptiness sets its trap. I fling my loneliness into the hole blown over and over again in the linchpin of capitalism. Sandy, the amusement park, is rising behind us. Silvio, silver and gold, lives in a hippie church he bought and converted steps from Washington Square. The flower bud throws a passionate drag parade after dark. Water, a fat bug, landed and blended into my prized brown bookshelf. Its death was like a movie, scurrying to dear life over my notebooks as I bludgeoned it with the Brooklyn rail. It really wanted to escape. I clubbed it in my own survival. You could tell it was shocked at its own death. Like the disbelief and denial of a boxer trying to will away to stay on their feet after they've been dealt the knockout punch in the face. Say it ain't so takes a second to sink in. I beat it over the head with a sack many times, happy and justified in my vengeance at its having startled me while typing up a poem and at such close quarters. Reliving Billy Mark's West, there's insects everywhere, ship of fools. The water was calm tonight, like chocolate milk, or black tar heroin, or a TV shut off. Cliff diving the Palisades, I don't see why not. Grand piano on wet streets, Rihanna riding in a car. Try to love one another. It was a year ago today. Say a little prayer for me. 7-6, more proof we live in hell. Still got some hurting left to do. He stopped loving her today. Don't fall off the sides. Keep hands and feet inside the cart at all times. 7-9, distant Soho. Heavy simulation rain. A lot of New Yorkers leave for the summer. I'm earthing. Last night on a quilt, I think I did like that beach better. In the shade, no service. Saved my friendship, glad it's back. Weed makes me angry, weed makes me cranky. Here's 20 minutes of me just saying things. You politely sit through it. We all politely sit through everything. It's how we've been trained to not put up a fight as the world is destroyed by greed. Step right up. Come on in. It's 88 degrees. I may be a drug addict, but it does help me feel better. Next time I'll just block you. I won't unfollow. Would that I could get rid of the buy in Robin Rice Gallery. Balance in all things can be hard to achieve. I know, I like the act of smoking. Always hold out for a bench with a table, though I never use it. Fouled with sticky drink and flies. Forgot I posted that selfie. Should I see who looked at it? I don't care. I am hungry, I am thirsty, though I no longer like eating. Need a bottled water. Had more money in my account than I expected. I think. I'm not sure what I expected. A thought is the length of a sentence. A line is the length of a thought. I like that block with Hudson Bar and books. I take a picture of it in profile with my new iPhone. Nicole tells me she is sorry our friendship disintegrated while I was with my ex. That guy's varicose leg vein looks like it's going to spring a leak or possibly explode. This is not about the overwhelming triumph of mundane ideas and moments which dominate our lives, and I'm just fine with that. If the world ends, all of our lives will be cut prematurely short. It would be a tragedy beyond anything that's ever happened to human beings by an exponential margin. It will be tragedy unlimited, another day in the life of the universe. There seems to be a need for more vulnerability and profound sadness in my poetry. In fact, to some extent, I think that's what poetry is. Many people have uneventful, okay lives until tragedy strikes them down. The subway is full of water. The trees are burning to death and their roots. I declare war on capitalism immediately and nothing happens. No one joins me. We just look at our phones, posting vehemently against extinction, which of course, utilizing outsized quantities of power, only accelerates our speed toward the coming demise. Park bench meditation. Blew up like a fucking prominent figure. What is the pain of a bird? I can watch it when I know I should be doing something else. I am happy to have my friend back. What took so long? Stupid ego crap. Maybe I will draw a little bit. Sam makes good money. I can't control the dialogue. I'm subletting my profession to the birds. Swept up this morning, 9.5 hours, drive 2.5 hours back. Buddy guy, amigo hombre, to the Revel scooters. Course takes a low mileage pietà aesthetic. Out of habit, I formed a lake. A nice wind pushes the seeds along the cut stone. Wiper's adjustment fetishizes nonplussed Hackney stove. She can sit by me, this gray woman smelling like cigarettes, in my grandma's furniture and blankets. They walk home from work down this stretch, in fashion you can tell from their clothes. Guys who hang out there in the scaffolding outside the pizza shop and Chinese restaurant call it the Strip. We just came here to fight for our lives. My art may be ugly, but I'm not. What in the Sam hell? When I'm high, I feel like my reality tunnel is a water slide. When I'm sober, it's like doing laps. Does Magnolia do gluten-free? I saw the picture of 3 and thought there's no way this is going to work. Less of a low-life slooge, I oozed down the bench with sore heart and red eyes. Now I feel reconstituted, with internal cornerstones of which I am one. Should I go home? Should I eat? Should I buy weed? Decisions. Puzzles. Where's my carcass? The dash cam is a scam. I don't really want to torment drugs with my sand. I think the flies like these leaves. The weather jukes and smites us. It's angry up there. Allowing access to Nathan Steen's 8th grade birthday sleepover where we played Madden, SNES, and WCW NWO World Tour overnight, and it later led to my career where I'm living now. Everything was so scheduled, nothing was casual or left to chance. That's how I got where I am today. Is that guy going to beat my ass if I try to buy weed from him again in Washington Square like David Lee Roth? Extend another day, Los Naps. He literally can get the fuck out. This French press blue sky immersing me in the prerequisite beauty and freshness of new hours. Writing's what I do when I'm not working, taking broken pieces of reality and fusing them with hearsay that happens to be flying by. 4 seasons we got ticket to the valley. I think my pen exploded. Not an expression. It got a little overexcited. It hyperventilated, like I do in my mask when I smoke weed and attend public functions. 710 Secret Window. Buried his wife under the corn. Take massive action on the rich kids. If you prick us, do we not bleed? You're all guilty of Teflon in the rain. Getting to know in-depth 7th Avenue South, 8th Ave, 9th Ave. $30 is a better ripoff than $40. Hogs and Heifers is a van store. The image of the poets on the breeze. Bought an 8th for $30 off a guy on St. Mark's Place. Cookies. Living the dream as it's already gone. Above the trees, reading the sky. Man, maybe I did read this already. resting my legs. Look what the cat dragged in, cruising for weed. This guy hits a pipe, other guy snorts. What time is it anyway for Saturday night? It's early, 1:45 a.m. Bars close at 4. Sexual chocolate. Who's hanging out at Automatic Slims or Pickwick House? Or Philip Seymour Hoffman put the hibiscus in his veins. He was here when I came to town. Now he's not, like the spotted pig. Upstairs with Gwyneth and Bob, while Devondra and Natalie and Bob and Ted and Carol and Alice. Maddie tells me you can pick psilocybin mushrooms from the cow patties after dawn, before the farmer comes out with his shotgun. Should I write an out? Help, I'm being eaten alive by bugs. Wish I could sit in a bar and not drink or order anything. Capitalism sucks. I want to be where the action is. Somebody write that down, fucking might forget it. Guy smoking a joint, pushing his dog in a stroller with Xmas lights on it, crossing 7th Avenue South at Christopher Street. Communing with my spirit guides. My dad is paying for this. Trying to dream this tourist rather than talking to girls. Ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies. Give me some peaches and I'll make you a pie. Embrace celibacy. Time is a yellow cab. I'm drinking sweet water clothes, staying up all night. 7-Eleven. Ghost Kitchen. Born in the 80s. What is Dordogne if not graffiti? The dirt speaking. And then these two buildings drove by in a pink car. Just because you got a table doesn't mean you need to write anything and not even use it. Akosawa's birthday reading was lit. 7-Eleven, also Bobby Stone's birthday, and my first girlfriend. All good people born on 7-Eleven. Lucky numerology I am to count these heroes among my friends. Bike rides by with Return of the Mac. A good sign, but I missed the footage. We are fighting for our lives, sitting on Hudson, where they left the marble tables by Cowgirl Seahorse. Lemonade specialties, stand-up talking. The Vandals all have MBAs. My bald spot is better some days than others. Degree Farm. Systematically deranging the senses since 1872. Going bald, but like in a cool way. Cezanne atomizing the molecules of visible color. Oh no, does Bob have a 2-story apartment? My vagrant's office 60 years behind my time, move about 500 degrees. I need a bike so fucking bad. Gonna sit here and eat this dark chocolate sunflower seed buttercup while I listen to these musical settings of Lord Byron and Edgar Allan Poe. 7-12, freshman composition. When the sun tries too hard, I make wars out of Sammys. Hard timing. Dead roach showed up on living room floor. Thought it might have been a cicada, but it's not that classy around here. I go to church 6 times a week. 7-13, home run derby. Horizontal burgers, far-flung destinations, as above, so below. Sun's out, guns out. Kicked plug, we played that dive. His house looked like shit. 7-14, emphysema Philharmonic. Nobody's on my side, not even history. This is my home on earth. Your vibe contains e-calm, victims of putty, Laneville Spa life show. Magnolia ugliness, me and my beat up heart, sets us apart. Fellow Tourette's, stillness push, resilient deep vellum walk cast. 7-15, Satori laser. Non-binary Chumbawamba, Did I mention the ocean is hiring? 716 Remastered Family. Just posted a nude. Thought that Branson was the roughest. John Godfrey tells us the servicemen on Oahu, where he lived 50 to 53, before it was a state, had a mynah bird in their bar that would repeat anything they taught it. What the fuck are you looking at? It would say, among other various and sundry things. Logging on, it's too hot for this shit. Upload complete, hot in the city tonight. Girl on Bleecker, I didn't suck that guy's dick. Guy she's with, you tried to. Girl, I did not try. Literally sweat dripping down my face sitting here at night in the dark. Julianne Moore sold her West Village townhouse for $15 million. Who could blame her? Put a kitchen on the parlor level. Xmas lights strung to a fire escape. Woman on Bleecker, I have a life. I have friends. John Godfrey show, I'd watch. Hell, I might have to be the one that films it. 36 years later, I arrive. 10 years to get a soul back. Whatever you believe is true. I was taught to believe a lot of things that made life as hard as possible. Walk through this world with me. Michael Robbins, also an overrepresented hack, doggerel, stylistic vampire. Venice Beach calls me back. LA is my town, too. Self-administer haircut. Wheat, greatest argument, Gnip picnic in Dumbo. Bend in the rainfall, pulling cans from the trash. Getaway toward bank, a melancholy incident. Making headway one piece at a time after penalty. Being extra nice, getting her done. Friendly with my heroes. Miscomplimenting their clerical works. A good poet is all I want to be. Not overstep the modesty of nature by requiring everyone applaud and declaim your genius by force. Don and Greg are on board. The women I asked didn't message me back. San Francisco, Oakland, Portland. It's 6 hours to France. This is the girlfriend inside. My theater company assaults bars, parks, and the street. In sharp disagreement behaviorally with gold leaf French fry sucking pigs. Neely Tchaikovsky's making a comeback, so's I. Though I never really was away. Though I never really was here. 10 years to pose casually at the threshold. I'll tell you my whole playlist. I have a large playlist. Muchos inspecting gives. Flattening the room. Jealous of IDs in its entirety? No, it does. Lacking habit, break new habit. I felt one song in retribution. Palace Laudanum, MD, on notice throw pillow. In Deers come responsibility. The proud and regal name Del Moore. Goings on about town. What it do? I have a chaotic nest. I felt bad. We shouldn't have let her go. ADR. Sometimes there is no internet connection. Hurry up, tree. My heart overdosed on commie summer stock. 717 summer stock. Barricade Mariner fair warning. I'm like YA lit. Psycho motor vigilance. Vigilante justice lying to God. He never saw my career. This is going to make things more expensive for the rest of our lives. Nice, heavy fuse. I'm a regular in K-Town, which is right near my house. The Ideas Gym is just farther off to the side. So, yeah, I don't know. Sorry if that was shitty. I thought there were some good pieces in there. That was a good flow, but my recitation, I was kind of burping the whole time. Anyway, that's thanks to my new favorite restaurant. I don't know what it's called. It's in K-Town on 32nd Street. I walked there today. I got a spicy pork, I guess it's a tekkemaki roll. Like a big roll. It has Well, it has coney in it. It's got, I think, like egg, cucumber, and this beautiful spicy pork. And then I get a spicy tuna roll. $4 for the spicy tuna, I think. $7.50 for the big roll. It's on 32nd Street, 2 blocks south of the Empire State Building, right off 5th Avenue. Just west of 5th Avenue on 32nd Street. I'll get the name. I want to get the name exactly. Thank you for watching. It's a Frankly Fabulous show. We'll be at New York Poetry Festival, July 24th, 12:30 a.m. at the White Horse Tavern stage. Don Yorty, Greg Masters, Don and Greg. It's going to be one for the ages. The mega powers unite. Thank you for watching. Send me write a comment, let us know what you're thinking. Write some poems in the comments. What the fuck? Tell your friends they need to write poetry already. Not to read Ben Lerner. Read Ron Silliman. No, read Erica Hunt. Jump the clock.